Hi, I'm Nancy Varughese. I'm the Program Manager for VCE programs at the School of Education at RMIT University in Melbourne, Australia. My presentation today is about the difficulties that teachers of maths and science face in teaching second language learners. When I refer to a second language learner, I mean students who are new to a language and the medium of instruction is this new language. I'm going to start with some of the known difficulties for second language learners. Now, in English, phonetics is a big problem. There is a well-known, famous and ridiculous pronunciation of koti. This is attributed to Bernard Shaw. Just showed that GH, if pronounced as in tough, rough, would be F. And O, as pronounced in women, would have the sound E. And TI, pronounced as in nation, tuition, it would have the sound sh. Hence, koti can be read as fish. You can imagine the problems faced by a learner of English who is trying to grapple with new words, hearing the teacher pronounce things in class, having not a clue what is being said. Then we come to words with different technical meanings. For example, solution in mathematics is very different from solution in chemistry. A cell in biology is different from a cell in physics. Words that have different meanings in different subjects in one language. Very often, when someone is learning something in a language that is unfamiliar to them, their natural tendency is to translate in their head. This code switching, as it is called, can produce a number of problems. For example, consider some familiar words such as little, small, few, bit, and say trying on a quote. And then someone says, it's a bit too big for your head. They may say, translate it to a little big. That's perfectly fine. It may still make sense. But if they translate it as small, big, it probably loses the whole meaning. And they're thinking, a small, big? Does that make sense? What is the person saying? Is he saying small or big? So students interpret the question on the basis of their first language as well as the cultural contexts they bring along with them. So it's not often clear to them what we are trying to say. Now I'd like to call your attention to what is known as Clement Newman hierarchy of errors. In a one-stage worded problem of mathematics, the student goes through 5 stages in solving it. They start with reading, comprehending, and then transforming that into a mathematical equation or some sort of format where they can solve it. And then they need the processing skills in mathematics to actually solve the problem, and then finally encode the answer and produce what is required as an answer to the question. And though this was done for primary school mathematics, I felt, or I argued in my research, that this can be equally extended to any level of mathematics, and I think problem solving usually goes through the same 5 stages. I revised this model to suit second language learners. And in that process, if you look at this modified and revised diagram that I have, the right-hand side of it, the same 5 steps are now affected by 2 other additional factors. One is that a second language learner tends to translate every step of the way. That is called code switching. Process it. At any stage, they may switch back and forth between their first and second languages, and this can cause an additional factor of errors at any step of the way. They also come with a culture base in their own first language, and sometimes knowledge of a first language affects their translation and the interpretation of the question. So we have to be aware of all this. And of course, carelessness is still a part of it. Anyone can make a careless mistake along any of these 5 steps. You can make a STEM glossary for your respective subject. Share the glossary with language teachers or teacher assistants. Make wall charts. Get students to be involved in making wall charts that will help them remember those words. Maybe make word games. Provide memory tips and tricks that will help them remember it for the rest of their life. Make it interesting for the students, at the same time scaffold them in learning the language and the technical terms. I call it language proactive teaching. Always be language conscious as you teach students. Speak slowly and clearly. Use gestures and diagrams wherever possible. Scaffold the use of new terms. Reinforce it, repeat it until it's very clear. Avoid idiomatic phrases. All these proactive steps on the part of a teacher will help the students to learn the concepts as well as the technical terms used be language proactive in your teaching. Thank you.